Hello, and welcome to the Collapse Life podcast. I'm your host, Zara Sethna. Today, I am extremely honored to have the leader of the People's Party of Canada, Maxime Bernier, on the show. A former businessman and lawyer, Maxime has been involved in Canadian politics for 2 decades. He's held positions as Minister of Industry and Minister of Foreign Affairs in previous governments before he broke from the Conservatives to start his own party. And he's here today to tell us what the heck is going on in Canada, how the country got to where it is, and whether there's still a chance to pull it back. Maxime, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Zara, for having me. I'm very pleased to be with you today.
Thanks. So let's start. What the heck is going on in Canada? Up until a few years ago, most people thought of Canada as this friendly neighbor to the north, where the politics could probably be summed up with just one word: stable. And now we're seeing standing ovations for Nazis and crackdowns on freedom convoys, and stable just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So, how would you describe Canada these days if you had to sum it up in just a few words?
It is not the country that I was growing here in Canada a couple of years ago, where I've been born. It's a different country right now with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. I must say that Trudeau was elected in 2015. Before that, we had a conservative government. I was part of that government. I was a minister under Prime Minister Harper. But when Trudeau came in power in 2015, that was a big difference. So what Trudeau is doing to our country is, opening our borders for mass immigration. And since 2015, we have more and more people that are coming to our country without doing any value test, or we are opening our gates. I don't know if you remember that, but we had a illegal crossing border called the Roxham Road in Quebec, and the Trudeau government, after 3 years, decided to close that and put a fence in where that Roxham Road was. But also at the same time, they opened the flood for more refugees coming at our airports. So the first challenge that we have is mass immigration. The second one is wokeism. Actually, Trudeau is doing everything to promote that radical ideology, and add to that the radical gender ideology. Trudeau is giving money to different groups, interest groups, to promote the transition of our kids. That's happening in our country right now here in Canada. If you're a parent and you have a boy or a girl and they're going to school, and they will have that indoctrination. It's not education anymore. And maybe if you're a boy who wants to be called, I don't know, Marie or another name, or they will do that without speaking to the parents. That's happening here, and that's the beginning of the transition, like they said. So for me, there's no there's no transition. There's boys and girls, and that's it. You cannot become another sex. And Trudeau is promoting that, and some provincial governments are doing that also. So, and all the regulations and the deficit, as you know, like you in US, we had the COVID hysteria 3 years ago, and Trudeau gave a lot of money to Canadians, money that was coming from the Bank of Canada, and we had a huge deficit. Now we are paying for that today with the inflation tax. So the country is a mess, economically, politically, and we will have an election in 2025. And I can tell you that the People's Party will be ready, because I strongly believe that we are the only real conservative national political party here in Canada.
With all of those issues that you just mentioned, and that's why you started the People's Party, to try and kind of deal with some of those. Why do you think that more Canadians don't see your ideas as being helpful to the country? Is it because the country is gripped by this woke ideology?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also the challenge that we have as a new young political party. We created the People's Party 5 years ago in 2018, when I resigned from the Conservative Party of Canada. I said at that time that the Conservative Party of Canada is intellectually and morally corrupt because they are not promoting conservative ideas. They're only conservative in name only. So, and the challenge that we have as a young political party is with the mainstream media. They are canceling us. It's very difficult to be in the mainstream media, the national TV or national newspaper. That's a big challenge for us. And also at the last general election, I was not able to participate in the national debates against these establishment politicians, Trudeau and O'Toole, but I was able to participate in the national debates in 2019 at our first election as a young political party. But I believe that the establishment are afraid of us. They know that if we have more coverage, we will be able to grow faster. So that's a challenge. But I can tell you, uh, it took 20 years for the Green Party of Canada to have more than 1.6% of the vote. And we did that at our first year in 2019. And it took them 28 years for having a first Green candidate elected in the House of Commons in Canada. I can tell you it won't take 28 years. We will have an election in Canada in 2025. And at that time, I will be able to participate in the national debates because at the last election, they created a new rule. They said for a new political party, you need to have 4% to be able to participate, 4% nationally to be able to participate in the national debates. And we had 5%. So I will be there. It will be easier for us to have more visibility, and the mainstream media will have to speak about our policies. They don't want to. We have very different public policies than the conservatives or the liberals. So that will give us, I think, more visibility. But at the same time, I'm traveling across the country, building our party, and we will be ready when the next election will come. I believe that we can grow from 5%, from 1.6% to 5%. We triple our score. So, and I know that, if you look at in the US, in Europe, in South America, populist parties are more popular. So people are fed up with traditional politicians. And and I believe that we'll be able to grow from 5% maybe to 8, 9, 10%. We'll see. But we are doing politics differently also. In politics, uh, if if you want to help people, you need to tell them the truth. But traditional politicians are telling people what they want to hear, and that's very different. We have a very strong electoral platform, and that's always the same one because it's based on ideas and convictions and big reform that we must do to regain our country. And what I've said in 2019, I'm saying the same thing today, and I will say the same thing at the next general election. So we are doing politics differently because we are looking for more long term, and we know that we may not be elected right now because what we are telling today, it may be not that popular today, but we believe that it will become popular the more we speak about it. And the best example is the immigration file here in Canada. When I spoke about lowering our immigration level, having a value test for each immigrant, people were saying, "Oh, that's a racist party," and blah blah blah. But they won't be able to do that at the next election because now we have about 50% of the population in Canada who is fed up with mass immigration. So when I started that, maybe it was only 20%. So, our support is growing, and the next election will be a very nice challenge for us.
I think because you've been shut out of the mainstream media and you didn't get a chance to debate, some of the ideas that you put out there get maybe misconstrued. So I wanted to kind of drill a little bit into this idea of mass immigration, because it has been twisted as though you are against immigration or that
Yeah.
you're racist and you want to keep Canada for so-called Canadians, whatever that might be. So can you just help us to kind of understand what your idea is about mass immigration versus immigration, controlled immigration?
Yeah. So what is mass immigration? Mass immigration for us in Canada, we are a country of 40 million people. So when you have 1 million people every year in our country, that is mass immigration. Per capita, Canada welcome more immigrants than any other G7 country and about 3 times more than the US. So it is mass immigration, and that is having an impact on, on Canadians and their way of life. Housing, for example, is very expensive in our country because all these immigrants and newcomers need a roof. And now there's a big pressure, and also 42% of them are going to Toronto and Vancouver, big centers. And that put pressure on prices for houses and renting. And now it's very expensive for Canadians to be able to have a house in a city in Canada. And what is happening? People living in Toronto and Vancouver are selling their house at a very good price for them. And after that, they're going to another city, maybe in Moncton, New Brunswick, or another city, and they're pushing the prices of houses over there up also. So we have a big problem of housing. Same thing with our healthcare system. We want fewer immigrants, but we want to be able to take care of them because healthcare, housing, that's like Canadians. They will need social services. And right now, our healthcare system in Canada is dysfunctional. So we need to open to more competition, to more private delivery of services. And that's a problem. So more people understand that, and they're looking and they said, we cannot have 1 million people every year in our country. 1 million people, it's 2 times the population of Quebec City. So for a small country, 1 million people every year, it's too much. And also, these people must be in line with our values, Western civilization values. But the majority of them, refugees right now, are coming from Africa, from other India and other countries. If they want to come here, I'm very open. But we need to have an interview with them, each one of them, and asking them questions about, do you believe that, men and women are equal, that we have a charter of rights, and we have strong values. We believe in democracy, the rule of law. So that must be a discussion that we must have with them. And being a Canadian for us is a privilege. It is not open for everybody. We did that in the past. We had interview with them in the past, 20, 22 years ago. We were doing that. And now we are not doing that. And Trudeau is opening. And Trudeau said, diversity is our strength. Diversity is good. But when you have more and more diversity, that's not good for the country. We have a law in Canada called the Multiculturalism Act. So you can come to our country and keep, your values and keep everything that you believe in your first country. But we don't ask these people to be part and to integrate our society. They can keep our culture, and the federal government is giving money for that. For example, if you're a Canadian from Chinese origin and you want to celebrate the Chinese New Year, the federal government will help you and give you money for that. I don't have any problem with that, but you must pay yourself for that. The federal government must promote our identity, our culture, our history. But the federal government is not doing that. So we have more and more immigrants, and they're going to ghettos, and they are not part of the Canadian society. We must stop that. And if look at what is happening in France, in Germany, in UK, there's ghettos over there, and there's places where it's very dangerous to go. We don't want that here in Canada. That's why we need to have the discussion on immigration right now, because I love this country and I want this country to be like that in 20 years.
Back in 2018, where you were still with the Conservative Party, you came under a lot of fire for a Twitter thread where you were talking about some of these issues about diversity and extreme multiculturalism. And we've already talked about some of those concepts, but I actually wanted to pick up on what you said you heard from the leader of the Conservative Party afterward about what words you should have used. And I know that you have a philosophy that our words are our weapons. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that and this philosophy and why words are so important to you.
Yeah, I'm a politician, and my goal is to communicate our ideas and to be able to have more people that will understand with good arguments. But yes, when I was a conservative, actually, I was when Harper resigned in 2016. We had a leadership contest for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada, and I was one of the candidates. I didn't win in 2017, sorry. I didn't win the leadership with 49% of support. Andrew Scheer won with 51%. And I tried to work with Andrew Scheer and the establishment of the Conservative Party of Canada. But a day, Andrew Scheer told me, and I had a meeting maybe about 15 months after the leadership. And I wanted to have a meeting with Andrew Scheer, the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And I told him at that time, my ideas, my platform was very popular. I hope that you'll take some of my ideas for your platform for the next general election, the election of 2019. And I must admit that Andrew Scheer was very honest. And he told me, Maxime, I understand your platform was very popular with the membership of the Conservative Party of Canada. But now I'm the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and I'm running to be Prime Minister of Canada. And we did a lot of polling and focus group, and your ideas are not popular with the general population. So I won't take any of your ideas for the next general election. So that's why I said, the Conservative Party is morally and intellectually corrupt, and they're not promoting any conservative ideas. But after that meeting, and I'm going to the tweet about diversity, I tweeted about what Trudeau said, that diversity is our strength and we must promote more and more diversity. And I say, no, you are changing our country, and we need to have fewer people who believe in our values, to be able to integrate them and keeping our country like it is. So when I tweeted that, I was still a member of the Conservative Party of Canada. And that was huge in the mainstream media. People were saying, what's that? Bernier is racist. Diversity is good. Trudeau is right. And Scheer didn't like that. And I believe that they did some polling about that. And I had a call from Andrew Scheer. And Andrew Scheer said, Maxime, when you're saying that, you're not speaking for the Conservative Party of Canada first. And it must be said, you must say that to your people, that it's your own opinion. And, because I'll be public and I'll say to Canadians that I don't share your point of view. And actually he did it. And so he said, but next time, if you want to do something like that, send your draft, your idea to our PR department, because we did a lot of polling and focus group, and we know what to say to Canadians, but also which word to use to be able to convince Canadians. And we're gonna approve your tweet, and you'll be able to tweet it after it. And that's crazy. And that's why I resigned, and I said that's they're not promoting any conservative ideas. And by doing that, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada is giving more credibility to the leftist narrative because he doesn't want to promote ideas, because right now we are living in a socialist era. And for him, it's easy to have a majority to tell people what they want to hear. But when they're doing that, they're not helping our country and they don't have any conviction. So these six tweets were the beginning of the end for me with the Conservative Party of Canada. And I believe that was the best political decision that I took at that time, created the People's Party based on the platform that I had when I was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. So we create that party based on ideas. And what I'm saying to people, if you like our ideas, and you can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca, and read our platform, it's all over there. That will be our platform for the next election. And if you like our ideas, I hope you'll support us. And if you don't like our ideas, please don't vote for us. We won't pander to anybody. So, and we are able to grow. Maybe it will take more time for us to have candidates elected, but when we'll be elected, we will have a strong mandate to do what we said that we're going to do.
I want to pick up on this idea that essentially that perhaps Canada has a uniparty, just like we have in the United States as well. And one very recent impression that people have of Canada right now is this viral video with the current leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, eating an apple as he's being asked questions in an apple orchard. And it's gone viral, and people here in the US are lauding him as some sort of hero who stood up to a lefty journalist. And I just wanted to get your take on it. Is it just theater? Is this just acting, trying to make it look like there's choice when really there is just a uniparty?
Yeah, there's a Uni Party. I must admit that Pierre Poilievre is a good communicator, better than Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole. These two were the former leaders of the Conservative Party of Canada. But that being said, it's easy to challenge, a journalist like that when he was saying things based on nothing. So that being said, he did a good job to challenge a so-called journalist. But that being said, if you look at the Pierre Poilievre's electoral platform and the Liberals, they're the same. The Migration Compact, we are the only political party that said we won't sign the migration compact coming from the UN, like Trump did. But Poilievre and Trudeau agree with that. Poilievre and Trudeau agree with mass immigration. Actually, Poilievre, to be elected as prime minister, he will need to have more support in the big Toronto era. Around Toronto, there's more seats around Toronto, the city of Toronto, than in Alberta, the province of Alberta. But that big city is leftist with a lot of immigrants. So he is pandering to them to be able to be elected prime minister. And that's why he doesn't want to challenge the mass immigration that we have. So on mass immigration, they're the same. On the Migration Compact, they're the same. On climate change, they're the same. Except, I must admit, Poilievre said, I want to impose a carbon tax to Canadians, but it's so important to fight the climate. We will need to achieve the Paris Accord, and to be able to do that without imposing a tax, I will put more regulations on businesses. But as you know, more regulation on businesses will have an impact on consumers. They will transfer that cost to consumers. And he's okay with net zero in 2050. So it's all about the same about climate change. And I can go on with that woke ideology. Is okay with that. And actually, he said that he doesn't want to do anything about the radical trans ideology. But that's a big debate in Canada. Parents are fed up with that. They want the federal government to say, no, they are their kids who are transitioning. So our position on that is all these surgeries must be illegal, criminal to do that for the kids under 18 years old. if you don't have 18 years old, you cannot drive a car, you cannot go to a bar, but you'll be able to decide yourself without the consent of your parents to have a surgery that it will be the end for your life. They're going to start with uh, hormones blockers, and after that, but all that must be illegal, and that's a responsibility of the federal government, because in Canada the federal government is in charge of the criminal code, and our proposal is to put that in the criminal code. It must be illegal and criminal to do that, but Poilievre won't do anything about it, like Trudeau. So I can go on and go on other issues. That's why it's a Uni Party. I call the Liberals and the Conservatives the LibCon Party.
Right. The counterpoint to that seems to be Alberta, which you mentioned already. There seems to be a little bit of a voice of reason coming out of Alberta. And when you look into that, it really kind of indicates that Canada is very much a divided country at this point, so much so that there's even a conversation about Wexit, with Alberta leaving the Confederation to go alone. What would that mean for the country? What would it mean for Quebec? And what kind of implications would that have for the United States if something like that were to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I must say that because the federal government with Trudeau or Poilievre, the Conservative, are interfering in provincial jurisdictions. If you read our constitution, provinces have a lot of autonomy, but that's not happening right now. So a province like Alberta, they're tired about that. They want to have their own sovereignty in their own jurisdictions. But because of the regulations and legislations coming from the federal government, they're not able to do that. So you have a separatist sentiment in Alberta. And same thing in my own province in Quebec. You have that separatist sentiment. Actually, the leader of the Parti Québécois, the separatist party, is very popular these days in Quebec. And he's speaking about a referendum again if he's elected as Premier of Quebec. And the election in Quebec will be in 2026. So because the federal government does not respect our constitution, you have movements like that at the provincial level for more autonomy. And yes, you're right. In Alberta also, they had discussion about Wexit, so they want to be independent like Quebec. And if you look at the polls in Alberta, about 25% of the population are ready to separate. And that's about the same in Quebec. So the only way to solve that, because I'm doing politics at the federal level, is to respect the Constitution and is to have a radical decentralization. Like Alberta, they want to control their pension plan for pension fund for their citizens. They want to have their own police force. But the federal government is saying no to that. But they must be, and they want also to control their immigration, but the federal government is saying no to that. They must be able to do that if you respect the Constitution. When you respect the Constitution, you will have that radical decentralization and you will give more autonomy to every province. So that being said, it's why we have that separatist sentiment in Alberta and in Quebec. And we are acknowledging that at the federal level. But Poilievre won't speak about that. He doesn't want, and Trudeau won't speak about that. They like to have a big, fat, federal, central government that will tell provinces what to do. So we are the only national political party that is having a solution for that. And it's simple, respecting the Constitution. What can be the impact for you in US about that? I don't believe that Quebec will be an independent country in the next 10 years, or Alberta. I believe in this country. I don't want to destroy this country. And I know that we have a solution to keep everybody together. And so I don't think it will have any impact on the US, because I strongly believe that it won't happen. The more popular the People's Party is, the better it is for the unity and the prosperity of our country.
You mentioned just the huge federal government, and then each provincial government also has a very large apparatus. I recently saw a survey that used StatsCan data to show something like 20% of the workforce works for the government, and that number might be even lower than reality. But beyond just the government jobs, there's handouts, there's welfare, there's a lot of reliance on the government in Canada. What do you think can be done about that to sort of help a more libertarian or liberty-minded message like yours to appeal to people who really do think government is the place to, yeah.
The problem, yeah, like Ronald Reagan said, yeah, government is a problem. And, we have crony capitalism here in Canada. And I'll give you another example why Poilievre and the Conservative Party are like the Liberals. For example, subsidies to big corporations. That's happening in our country. Corporate welfare. But Poilievre and the Conservatives are okay with that. The best example, the federal government gave $10 billion to one corporation in Ontario. $10 billion. It's about half of the budget of our national defense. And as you know, you in US are asking for Canada to invest more in our own defense. But Trudeau and Poilievre are not ready to do that, but they're ready to give $10 billion to one corporation in Ontario. And when that happened, what did Pierre Poilievre? Nothing, because where that money will go in the riding where the corporation is, it's a conservative riding. And Poilievre wants to keep that riding conservative with a conservative member of parliament. So he thinks that if he's speaking against that, it would be maybe more difficult for him to keep that riding. So he is pandering to big corporation, and that's the way he's doing politics. We said we must cut all corporate welfare, and if we do that, we can save between $8 and $12 billion every year. So that's part of our platform. But yes, we have crony capitalism, and also at the provincial level, you have, like Quebec, the provincial government, that is a socialist government. And because, when you have a bigger government, there's less freedom, and then you have less freedom, there's less prosperity and economic growth. So, and the Quebec government is asking always for more and more money coming from the federal government to help them. And our proposal on that is to cut, we call that equalization formula in Canada. It's a welfare program where the federal government is giving money to poor provinces coming from rich provinces. And what we said, we must change that formula because it's unfair, and it's a way for poor provinces to not do any big reform to attract more private investment. And so we need to cut that. We need to be less generous. And like that, a province like Quebec or New Brunswick will have to have more free market policies. And that's the only solution. But Poilievre and Trudeau won't speak about that. So that's why in Canada, we need to do all these reforms. And the country is not going in the right direction. But I believe that our time will come and we'll be able to fix that when we'll have a couple of candidates elected.
So you mentioned that Canadians are going to the polls in 2025, unless there's a snap election. And you have a lot of hope with your own platform. And so we wish you well on that. And just as we close, I just wanted to ask you, so, we're in a pretty unstable world right now, with a lot of emerging crises. So what keeps you up at night, but also what gives you hope? What are the bright spots for you?
What is giving me hope is the fact that we are able to grow that party. The fact when I'm traveling, I've meeting Canadians, and when they understand our philosophy, our platform, they're coming on board. And we can, I don't need to be a prime minister. I hope I'll be prime minister of this country. But to bring changes, I don't have to be prime minister. We have to shift the majority on our side. And when we'll have more people, that will, because I know that the establishment political parties are doing politics by polling. So if we are able to have more people in line with our ideas, that will influence the Canadian politics. And being in parliament, that will help. So I strongly believe that we'll be able to change, because we are in politics to change the public opinion, not only to listen to them. We believe that we have a strong vision of this country, and we believe that we are able to grow and to have an impact, and that impact can come before, for me, being prime minister of this country. So I'm looking at that, the People's Party, and what we did in the past. It's encouraging for the future. What also, at the same time, I have two daughters, 24 years old and 21 years old, and I'm doing that for a better future for them. But I also, sometimes it's a little bit sad, because I'm meeting people in our country that are saying, Maxime, I won't do the fight here. I'm going to the US, I'm going to Florida, I'm going to Texas. That's it, bye-bye. I'm telling them that that's your choice. But for me, I'm a Canadian, I like this country, and I will fight, and I believe that I'm able to win that fight.
That's great. That's great. Well, before we close, is there anything that I didn't ask that you would want to tell our audience?
But I just want to let them know that if they're curious and they want to know more about the People's Party in Canada, they can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. They can follow me on Twitter, Maxime Bernier, also on YouTube, Rumble. We are very present on social media. And it's for me, the fact that you are interviewing me today, it's a nice opportunity to speak about what I believe, and I really appreciate that, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we do hope that you'll come back again and keep us posted on what's happening in Canada.
I will. Thank you.
That's great. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Friends, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Max Bernier today. We'll be posting more great content like this every week on Rumble and YouTube. So please check us out on our channels and like and subscribe, share, comment. All of that engagement really helps us to reach a broader audience of more intelligent viewers like you. Please also follow us on Twitter at collapse_life. And on Substack, we have new stories coming out every week at collapselife.substack.com. We're completely fueled by the support of our viewers and readers, and we really, really appreciate that support. So please do subscribe and follow us. We've dubbed Collapse Life the thinking person's guide to society and demise. It's about opening eyes, taking control, and taking action in our lives. And we look forward to bringing you more engaging, intelligent voices like Maxime's. And we can't wait to see you on the next podcast. So until then, always remember, keep your chin up. It's only collapse. See you soon.